In this section, we will cover the Hopwa APR in ClientTrack. Some of the things we'll be covering is how to set up the Hopwa APR initially in the system, how to run the Hopwa APR, and also some of the logic behind the Hopwa APR. You can find the Hopwa APR by navigating to the Home Workspace, Georgia HMIS Reports, hover over HUD HMIS Reports, and then click on Hopwa APR. Something you will see here is if there's any other Hopwa APRs that have been set up in the system, which there probably are. We're actually in training right now, which is why we don't see any. But you will see those listed here, and you will also see the grantee name here. And so it's totally normal to see other Hopwa APR reports here. However, you will need to create your own to be able to run it for your project. So to set up a Hopwa APR, you'll click Add New. You'll notice there's a lot of fields here. A lot of these are not required though. So what we need to do is just fill out the ones that are required. One of those is the operating begin date and end date. So this is the reporting period. So let's say our reporting period was July 1st to June 30th. And so you'll have to set that there. You'll also have to do a grantee name. This can actually be whatever you would like it to be. It's mainly for the purpose of being able to pull this up later on. Poverty level for anyone in Georgia is going to be the United States. Here you will only see organizations that you have access to. So that's why I see such a large number, because I do have access to all the organizations. But for users that do have access to more than one organization, you'll just want to make sure you select your appropriate one. And then unlike other compliance reports, the Hopwa APR is meant to capture multiple projects and multiple project types in one APR. And so it would be normal for you to select any of the Hopwa projects that you need to show on your Hopwa APR. I will note you will not select any of the grants here. You just need to select the programs. The grant section here is a legacy item for very old data when it was recorded in a different way. But now we just need to select programs. And actually, if you select grants, it can make your project data not appear. And so it's every now and then we'll get a ticket of someone running a report and it's pulling zeros. And usually that's because they have gone in and selected a grant. So just leave grant alone. And then under zip code here, you will want to do the zip code of where your organization operates out of. So I'm just going to type in a zip code there, click search. It's going to add that automatically. And we can go ahead and click finish. Once we click finish, now we can see our Hopwa APR that we have set up here. Something that I also find helpful is, and this works on all reports or forms in ClientTrack, is if you click the star right here, it will add it to your favorites. And so now I always have the Hopwa APR. I can just click here, and then I'll get a list of any Hopwa APRs in the system. This also means you can set up multiple Hopwa APRs. So maybe you're doing some troubleshooting and you need to do a Hopwa APR that just has a couple of the projects, not all the projects. Then you can easily do that, give it a different name to distinguish between the two, and then you can go in and pull it up at any point. Now to actually run the Hopwa APR, you'll click the action button beside it and you will click Hopwa Report. When you click Hopwa Report, it will go ahead and run this report and start to get our information out of the system. You can also click on Edit Instance. If you click on Edit Instance, it just takes us back to that form where we can go in, make any modifications we need to. But let's go ahead and jump into actually running the Hopwa report. So I'm going to click on Hopwa Report. And depending on how many projects you have and also how many clients are in those projects, sometimes this might take a little bit of time to populate. and here we have our Hopwa APR. We can navigate that through these buttons right up here. If we want to export this to PDF, which would be a common thing to do, you can click this little icon here, take it straight into PDF, and we'll go ahead and start to navigate some of these pages. Now, something you will notice is there's a lot of blank fields here. And so just to give you a heads up, the Hopwa APR and client track, it is going to pull all of the client level data within the system. So any of the data that it has, it's able to report on that on the Hopwa APR. But that also means there's a lot of things on the Hopwa APR client track's not going to know how to populate, such as these fields here on the next pages as well. These are all things that would manually need to be filled out. Like, for instance, this is people with unmet housing needs. That's not anything recorded in HMIS, and so it's not something that the system would have the capacity to pull because information is just not there. And so basically what you'll end up doing is you will pull the Hopwa APR report, and then you'll be able to get all your client data that you need off of it, and then you can combine that with all the information that you would manually type in or fill out to get a complete Hopwa APR. So page 6 is where you actually get into starting to look at some numbers. So this is going to pull the number of households that received any Hopwa program enrollments that are housing subsidy enrollments. And so what that means is pretty much all of your Hopwa project enrollments besides supportive services only. Supportive services only enrollments would not count for here because this is just looking at people that got enrolled into a project that provides housing subsidy. And so you'll have a number here, so we can see there's 8 individuals that were served with Hopwa housing subsidy assistance. Here we have continuing in the Hopwa program from the prior operating year. So what this is looking at is looking at unduplicated people that had an enrollment in one of those housing subsidy projects, and that enrollment spans the before the program start to within the program start. So if my program, we put this report settings at starting at July 1st, 2017. So if I had a client that had started in May of 2017 and their enrollment was spanned within the reporting time frame that we use, so they weren't exited before July 1st, 2017, then they would count here as continuing. This other information is just going to show where people came from, and so you should get a matching number here of 8. And that's how you can verify that that is not missing anyone. We'll go ahead and go to the next page here. This is going to list homeless veterans. So this is going to be a veteran and that was also marked as coming from a homeless situation. And then also how many people were chronically homeless. And then here's where it gets into not just the individuals with HIV/AIDS who qualified for the Hopwa housing assistance. So this is the heads of households. But now it's also going to say all other persons that are diagnosed HIV that are in that same enrollment. And so it's going to add that together there. And then on this third line, it's also going to say any other family members that do not have HIV. Those will show up on this total line here. So we can kind of see here we would have 8 families, but 12 people total. And this 8 should also match the previous question we were on there. So we'll go ahead and continue on, knowing that we had 8 families with housing subsidy program enrollments and then 12 individuals that make up those 8 families. Here's where it just breaks down the age for each of those, and so we want to make sure that that number matches up as well. So that's the 8 individuals, and then it's going to pull the other people in the family and give us a total, and there's that 12, and so that matches up as well. Next it gets into race, and so this looks at the individuals here, and so we want to make sure that matches up. So we have 8 there, which is correct. This next thing, the household area median income. So in the section of the Hopwa training video where we talk about data collection, I mentioned that the financial evaluation is where this is captured. And again, from my graded data, this is probably not already going to have that assessment. And that's why here we're only seeing 3, when really we should be seeing 8 here, because we know there are 8 households that are enrolled into a Hopwa housing subsidy project. But there's only 3 showing here. And that's going to mean that some of those families do not have that assessment. And again, we would need to go in and manually add that. And I'll get in a little bit after we go through this. I'll show you how you can actually go in and see who these 3 people are. So then you can also see who do you need to go add that for. So we'll go ahead and continue on here. This is going to be more information where you would manually fill that out, as well as here. Page 12 gets us back into some data that's pulled from the system. So these are going to be families or households that are receiving these different assistances, which are all tied to project enrollments. And so we've got like families. This would be families in Tibra. We've got Struma families here, and then so forth. And it's going to deduplicate that in case there are families receiving multiple enrollments in different Hopwa project types. It'll deduplicate that, and you'll have your total households there, which again should match up on page 6 with our household number. So that's where we get 8 there. Down here we have supportive services provided by project sponsors also delivering Hopwa housing assistance. This is how many households got an enrollment into a Hopwa supportive services only project. So that is how this number is pulled. And the reason why this is populating here under supportive services from sponsors also delivering Hopwa housing assistance is because it knows there were other clients, or at least one client within this Hopwa APR got housing subsidy, got a program that provides housing subsidy, and that's why they are listed in this column. If you were an organization that only provided supportive services, so you did not have Struma, Tibra, permanent housing placement, any of those, then this should always be a 0, and instead the system will automatically put them in this category here, which is supportive services provided by project sponsors that only provided supportive services. So this is a field some people get mixed up on. This is not saying that this person that got supportive services also got enrolled into a housing subsidy. It just is saying that this agency that is providing this number of households with supportive services enrollments, that they also provide housing subsidy programs as well. And so that's kind of how that works out. And also it is, as a general rule, it is very common in Hopwa projects for a client to be enrolled in multiple Hopwa projects at the same time, such as being enrolled in supportive services initially and then being enrolled in other housing Hopwa projects later on. And so the system does allow you to enroll a client into multiple Hopwa projects. So that is just something to think about. Sometimes we get a question on that. Here we have the housing information services. Now everything so far we've looked at is just based on program enrollments. This is actually based on services. And so it is important that when you are enrolling clients in Hopwa, you don't just stop after you do an enrollment, but also you are recording those ongoing services that you provide. And you just will record that through the standard service screens within Client Track. And that is where this field populates from. This is all stuff that you would manually need to fill out. And kind of an easy way to know if you need to manually fill it out is it probably won't have a 0 here. It'll just be totally blank, versus other fields that populate from Client Track will have at least a 0 there. They won't just be totally blank. So we'll go ahead and continue here. This is where it breaks down some different outcomes for people that have exited these different project types. Here we can see there were 3 people that exited the transitional short-term support facility project we had. And we've got here 2 that continued receiving Hopwa housing subsidy assistance into the next operating year. And so that's just going to be dependent on that program enrollment. If it spans more than just the current reporting year that you're using for this report. And then for people that exited, it will have them broken down here, their outcomes. And then down here, total number of households receiving transitional short-term housing assistance whose stay exceeded 24 months. So this is people that have a long enrollment into that project type. So we'll go ahead and continue on here and look at this information. So this is some more outcome. Something to be aware of here is this question right here: likely that additional struma is needed to maintain current housing arrangements. What that's looking at is that's looking at households that are still enrolled at year end. So our year end for this report period was June 30th of 2018. So if they are still enrolled and they have not been exited on that date or before, then they will automatically show up here as likely that additional struma is needed. And for other people that have exited, it will list those exits here. This is where it looks at people that had struma enrollments from previous years. This one looks at the prior operating year, so it's going to look at 12 months back. This one looks at 2 prior operating years, so it's going to look at 24 months back. So you can kind of see your people that have continued to get enrollments in struma each year. Continuing on here, we get into some more service-based questions, and so these are going to be, there's a service that you can record in Client Track, just called Hopwa Case Management, and that's where it's going to populate this. This is the pulled from the what's called the Hopwa assessment, which I cover in the data collection video section. Again, that is going to be, we'll pull it up real quick. Also, if you're ever pulling up a report like this, you can easily minimize it. And it's going to go up here, so then you can actually go in and pull up anything you need to. But that Hopwa assessment that I showed you, those are those questions right here. And so that is what this is getting at. And so we can see here, these are all zeros, and that's because we have not, for the clients that are part of this reporting period that we're running this for, they have not had this assessment done, and so it's not showing this information right here. And so that's where that is linked into. And then if we, and also just to note too, remember this, the date for these Hopwa assessments, they have to be within that project reporting year. So whatever year we are running this for. So that's just something to think about as well. We'll go ahead and continue on here. This question here is also pulled from that Hopwa assessment. And so that is the last question actually of the Hopwa assessment covers that. So that's where that's pulled. So we'll go ahead and continue on. This is more information that you would manually pull. This is where it gets into some other specific project type, number of households served, and so it'll be listed here. It will not populate these fields, so more stuff to fill out. This is service-based and just to do with services that are tied to a STRUMA enrollment. And so this looks at people that got mortgage, rent, utility assistance, and then it breaks it down to people that just got mortgage, people that just got mortgage and utility, people that got rental costs only, and people that got rental and utility costs. So again, you really want to go and record those individual services you're providing, such as rental assistance, utility assistance, and you want to make sure you are tying that to the STRUMA enrollment. So you would enroll the client in STRUMA, and then as you provide these services, you would be sure to record those services up under that enrollment. And that is going to then populate the number of households here. And again, this will not populate. This will be something you will have to fill out. Something that you can do, though, to kind of help you with this is anything that is keyed into the system, you can report on it. And so something that is beneficial for a lot of Hopwa agencies is there is a basic service reports that you can go in and run. So if I go to standard reports and run service summary, I could go in and pull some information to see the dollar amounts of these different services that I'm offering. And then also I would probably need to do some calculations on other expenditures I have that are not just to do with the rent, but also like admin costs, that kind of thing. And then you can get all of your financial information. And so just something to think about. Continuing on here, we have, this is the final part where it's just looking at people who received utility costs only. This is for permanent housing placement services. It'll list there. And then continuing on, these are all service-based. And so here we would be able to, these would populate as we record those services for our clients. And that's how that works. And this is the final question here that would be pulled from Client Track, and that is service-based as well. There's a service called Housing Information Services that you can record. And that takes us to the end of the Hopwa APR. So something I mentioned earlier in this training video is that it is very helpful to be able to go in and actually see the individual clients behind the data. So what we were just looking at with the Hopwa APR, we could not go in and actually look at who were those clients that make up that data so that we can look for data quality issues and so forth. These two options right here, though, allow us to go and drill down and actually see individual report sections and the clients that make up those sections. So if I click here, it's going to actually give me several different options, and this is all going to be based on the Hopwa APR we've set up. So it's just going to be looking for clients that would show up under that reporting period, under those projects that we have selected. So for instance, if I do area median income and hit report, it's going to then pull those clients that, and here we knew that there were 3 different clients that showed up there when we should have 8. So this would tell us right here, well, here's these 3. And then comparing this to another drill down report we could do, we could easily find out what are the other families that we need to go and add that financial evaluation. So this is going to be very key in cleaning up data, especially when it comes to migrated data. And all of these allow you to go in and drill down and see those individual clients. And we can see here, it also lists who got Struma, who got supportive services only, who got the transitional short-term housing facility. Also, on each of these, you'll note that it lists the page from the APR and also the section, so that can help you locate the question that you are trying to see the clients for. If we go back and click on this part here, there's two different options here. And these are both fields that are from the Hopwa APR as well. And when we do this, we would also just need to select our organization and click report to run that. So that is the Hopwa APR and client track. Hopefully that was beneficial. And as always, if you have any further questions, feel free to click help. You can report an issue or ask a question, and we can support you further. Thank you.